Welcome back to Our Culture to the World. This is part two of my conversation with Dr. Joseph Farquharson. We're talking about the languages Jamaicans speak. Now, if you haven't seen part one, I encourage you to go watch that and then come back and watch part two. Enjoy. Yeah, let's talk in a little more. Let's talk in a little more detail about the Jamaican language and what should we call it? Because I've heard Jamaican Creole, I've heard Patois.
So what to call it? So you've heard me calling it
Jamaican
Jamaican
language, right?
or the
Or
Jamaican language.
Jamaican, right?
Uh, Most Jamaicans, I would say, refer to the language as Patois or Jamaican Patois. But when I say we, I mean a few linguists have avoided that term because it originally meant something like rough speech or rural speech in French, where the term is taken
Right, right.
from. And so we have avoided it because of that negative connotation it had. The truth is that many Jamaicans have sanitized the term. So now when many Jamaicans say patois, it doesn't come with that negative connotation. Yeah? Because from a survey that the Jamaican Language Unit ran in 2005, three-quarters of the respondents said that Jamaican is a language. And that is a huge change from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Yeah, that you had like 70% of people saying, yes, this is a language. Yes, this can be used in parliament. Yes, this should be used in schools. It shows that the tide has shifted. Um, so we have advocated calling it Jamaican. And this is not something that only, the people at UE are doing. Who people say, they have their heads in the cloud or in the clouds. But there are non-academics who have been referring to the language as Jamaican. So in the early 1980s, I've forgotten Ken's name, Ken's last name. But there's a gentleman whose first name is Ken, who wrote one of those little phrase books for tourists and so on. And he refers to the language as Jamaican. So the book is called How to Speak Jamaican. That
Okay.
is the early 1980s. Um, and he was echoing a charge by linguist Mervyn Elaine that said, why are we referring to these languages with all of these additional things? Jamaican Creole, Jamaican dialect, Jamaica talk, and so on. I said, but why don't we just refer to them using the name of the nation that uses them? So in the same way that Spanish people speak Spanish, and
Right.
French people speak French, Polish people speak Polish, then Jamaican people speak Jamaican.
That makes
Vincentian
sense.
people speak
Makes sense.
Vincentian. And we don't have to bother with all of this extra stuff. And
Mhm.
again, it's a part of the whole process of self-recognition and self-actualization when we realize that what we do and how we speak is similar to what other people are doing. And if they can use their own ethnic word, name, to refer to their language, what about us?
Okay. Yes, yes, that makes sense. And yes,
Mm.
good. And really, that's a move in the right direction. And I'm really happy to hear, from the one you said about that survey and that the vast majority of, and that was like 20 years ago,
20 years ago, yes.
Jamaicans recognize it as a language. I think we still have a long way to go in Guyana, because,
I
I there's this guy in his group on Facebook, and sometimes you would see, this debate always comes up about whether Creole is a language or not. And
Yeah, tell you what, we refer to them as the chattering classes. And the thing about that set of people is that they are loud.
Mhm.
Yeah? You have the loudest voice on social media or on radio, etc. And that is what we thought in Jamaica up to 2005. So if you looked at the letters to the editor in the Gleaner or in the Jamaica Observer, if you looked at discussion forums on the internet, you would think that, oh my God, nothing has changed. It's the same thing. But then we went out and spoke to the
To the
people,
people.
and we found that the people had gone past that long ago. But there are some conservative people, and those conservative people, they have a loud voice. Yeah? And so you think that the majority of people believe what they believe, think what they think, but that's not true. And I would say if you do a similar study in Guyana, it is very likely that you would get similar results to Jamaica. First and foremost, Guyana is ahead of Jamaica because Guyana is doing multilingual education now. So they have a project running in several, involving several indigenous communities that uses indigenous languages as medium of instruction. Yeah. Jamaica had a pilot project in 2005. It did have the blessing of the government, but then the government decided to go in a different direction. Guyana, both in terms of policy and here now in terms of practice, is going in the right direction. So things are not as hopeless as we think. When you are very close to the thing, very often you don't see the bigger picture. And so you have to step back. And you also have to step back and really think about where you were. Where were we in 2005? And listen keenly, watch the debates. For one, you do find a lot of people being more vehement, more vociferous, and more aggressive. Chances are they have taken that position because they now find themselves on the side of the minority.
Minority, okay.
So they get the sense that most people are taking up, this thing that
We
they
have to
think
fight for
is
our survival.
yes. So there's hope. There's hope.
All right,
And
good.
all through the Caribbean. Of course, things are not happening as quickly as people like you and me would want it to happen. But I think what is important to note is that we are not where we were. And where we are now is a much better position than where we were 5 years, 10 years, 20 years before.
Good, good, good. That's great. So English is the official language, but are we safe to say that Jamaican is the national language of Jamaica?
Uh, Well, I'm not sure if why you said safe at all, because it is the fact. It
All
is.
right, yeah. Mhm.
And this is true not only of Jamaica, but of
Diana.
many of the
Mhm.
the English official countries of the territory, where although English is the official language, the language that people associate with their sense of belonging to the nation is the Creole language.
Right,
Yeah, so when
right.
people think of, am I a Guyanese? Am I a Jamaican? Am I a Vincentian? They don't think about standard Vinci English. They
Mm.
don't think about standard Guyanese English. They think about Creolese in the case of Guyana.
Right.
They think about Jamaican in the case of Jamaica. And when we go abroad and we buck up one another, the test is not whether you speak standard English. The test is whether you speak Creolese, whether you speak Jamaican, and so on and so forth. So there's absolutely no doubt that the Creole languages are the national languages of the
Languages.
region.
Of course, right. Yes. And so now talking about Creole language in Guyana, of course, there's some of us who say Guyanese Creole. There's some who say Creolese. Um,
Some say
of course,
Guyanese.
right. But and well, some say Guyanese. But we speak about this Creole continuum from Basilect to Acrolect.
Mhm.
Does Jamaican, as a linguist, do you see it being on a similar kind of continuum?
All right, so I'm going to give you the answer I think you want.
No, no, no. Give me the real answer.
And then I'm going to throw a spanner in the works.
Okay.
So I'm going to, simple, yes,
Mhm.
looks kind of similar. And in fact, that concept of the Creole continuum was developed with Jamaica and Guyana in mind.
Okay.
So it comes out of the work of linguists such as Richard Alsop, working on Guyana, David DeCamp working on Jamaica, and Derek Bickerton working on Guyana. That's the history of the concept of the Creole continuum.
Mhm.
And the understanding is that language in these communities exist on a line, on a continuum, which is an English dialect continuum. So let us start there. Because in the 1950s, 60s, the understanding then, both among academics and lay people, was that everything in the space was English,
Mhm.
and we're dealing with dialects of English. But you have standard English, which is a dialect of English.
Mhm.
I know the lay person out there thinks, okay, standard English is standard English, and then
Right.
you
That's
have the other things are dialects.
mhm.
No, standard English is a
A
dialect of
dialect
English.
of English, right? Mhm.
Yes. So standard Guyanese English is a dialect of Guyanese English.
Mhm.
Yes. But then you have something that is very different from standard Guyanese English. Very, very different. And that is what linguists have referred to as basilectal Creole.
Mhm.
Yeah?
Right.
Um, so the basilectal Creole, it is thought, has the most African features in it. Is the form of the Creole that is most distinct or most different from standard Guyanese
Mhm.
English. And then in the middle, you have a range of varieties that come about as people kind of mix the things at the two ends. And these emerge in different ways. So for some people, it is because, and this is how the theory goes. For some people, it's because they start out at the basilectal end, what we could call the deep Creole, and they are learning or attempting to learn standard English or
English.
standard
Mhm.
Guyanese English. And these different varieties emerge based on what they are able to achieve. So some people come closer to standard Guyanese English than others. And so you have varieties emerging in the middle. But I think one set of people that has been ignored are those people who start out with standard Guyanese English, but because they live in Guyana and they have to operate in the Guyanese space, they have to learn Guyanese Creole or Creolese. Yeah? And so they are also introducing differences. So that is the Creole continuum. The same applies, if we change out the names, same applies to Jamaica. Some scholars have been moving away from the continuum as
Mhm.
an explanation for language variation in these communities. Uh, I don't think we have something that we have used to replace it. what we know is that we don't like the continuum.
Okay.
Um, because it also leads people to a kind of simplistic view of what the variation looks like on the ground. And in truth, it is multidimensional. So you have differences between rural and urban people. But you also have differences between rural communities that are close to Georgetown and rural communities that are far from Georgetown. In the same way that you have differences between rural communities that are close to Kingston or Montego Bay and rural communities that are far from those urban centers. Then there are gender distinctions. Men and women don't talk in the same way. Young people and old people don't talk in the same way. Um, Rich people and poor people don't talk in the same way. People from inner city communities don't talk the same way as people who also live in the urban centers but live outside inner city communities. So there are all of these different variables involved in variation. And when we characterize these communities, Jamaica, Guyana, Dominica, Barbados, only in terms of the Creole continuum, we do an injustice to the richness
Of the language.
of the language.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. So, you've really, really shared a lot, and I really, I know the viewers are learning a lot from this conversation.
Mhm.
Tell me, you're at the Jamaican Language Unit. So, what is the role of that unit in the promotion and preservation of the Jamaican language?
Okay, so the Jamaican Language Unit is really, I was going to say the culmination, but that wouldn't be right. It wouldn't do justice to the man. But it is one of the, the culminating points of the career of Professor Hubert Devenish, who is now retired, that back in the early 2000s, the Jamaican Parliament had set up a committee to discuss the review of the Charter of Rights. And Professor Devenish and a class of his might have been his course, Language Planning, because he had also instituted on the Mona campus a final year undergraduate course called Language Planning. So if things were, he thought, if things were supposed to move forward, there had to be a cadre of trained people who would help to get the work done. So generations of students have passed through language planning, and they put together a proposal to this Joint Select Committee for including in the Charter of Rights provision for freedom from discrimination on the grounds of language. Yeah, which was, probably revolutionary. It was revolutionary in Jamaica. And the interesting thing is that the committee took the submission seriously. It gave it serious consideration and came back with the conclusion that although it seemed like a good plan, they didn't think that the country had been properly prepped for the implementation. Because once you put that in, it had all sorts of legal ramifications.
Right,
Because it's very possible, once you put it in, a man could go into a government office tomorrow, after it's passed, and say, why aren't you dealing with me in my language? And why aren't these forms in Jamaican? And so they thought more work needed to be done. One, there needed to be a consistent and widely disseminated writing system for the language. There needed to be more public education on the language and more research on the structure and usage of the language. Um, and out of that came various things. So the language, And they also asked that a unit be set up at the university that would do the preparatory work.
Okay.
That then was born the Jamaican Language
Language
Unit.
unit.
The Jamaican Language Unit took a writing system that Frederick Cassidy had devised in the 1950s, first published in full form, I believe, in his 1961 book, Jamaica Talk. And they made minor adjustments to it. And that was dubbed the Cassidy JLU writing system. And they started to disseminate that, especially through a book called How to Write Jamaican, Writing Jamaican the Jamaican Way, which, we still have copies of it. And that was disseminated for teaching people how to write the language. And up to today, we have workshops teaching people how to write the language. One is coming up October 10th, which is Frederick Cassidy's birthday. Every October 10th, we have sessions, and very often, again, on International Mother Language Day, we have sessions too, held online. Anybody can join. We teach the writing system in our courses. Other universities invite me to teach. So Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, they invite me in annually to teach the writing system to drama students. The University of Technology has, I think, at least one course on Jamaican, and the University of the West Indies, Mona, has a course on the structure and usage of the Jamaican language. It is also taught in, so lots of Jamaicans out there know the writing system. But more importantly, we have social media platforms under the name of Broadcast Jamaican, an Instagram page that has 80,000 followers, a YouTube channel
What is
that
the
has
Instagram page?
Broadcast Jamaican.
Broadcast Jamaica. Okay, I gotta look for
And
it.
that broadcast is spelled
BRA. Right.
BRADKYAASJAMIEKAN. So it's
All right, I
spelled
look for
in
it.
the writing system. And
Okay.
every day, 80,000 people potentially are exposed to the Jamaican language and things written in the Cassidy JLU writing system. Yeah. So we did that. We did this survey on what Jamaicans think about the language now. We did a survey on what linguists call the competence that Jamaicans declare, So do they declare themselves to be speakers of Jamaican or speakers of English or speakers of both? And also we ran a pilot bilingual education project in a few primary schools, and that had very good and significant results. So that's the birth of the Jamaican Language Unit. I refer to it as a language planning and language advocacy agency in the Department of Language, Linguistics, and Philosophy. So that's our chief goal. People come to us when they have questions about the language, and we also do strategic planning, for where the language should be, not just in 2025, but in the next 5, 10, 20 years. A lot of that is now being aided by artificial intelligence and large language models, because things that we thought would have taken us 10 years to do. So 2 years ago, things that we thought would have taken us 10 years to do are now taking us 5 seconds. Yeah. So when people told us, oh, how are you going to make Jamaican an official language? Um, to translate books into Jamaican is going to take a lot of money. Now, ChatGPT can do it like that. And the interesting thing is that ChatGPT, I'm just using ChatGPT as an
As an
example,
example, right?
can recognize the Cassidy JLU writing system. So I have had conversations with ChatGPT where I write completely in the Cassidy JLU writing system
And it
and it
responds to you.
responds, yeah, coherent conversation.
Right. But listen, translation is something else that I do. And I know that there's what in translation, there's what's called post editing
Editing,
of
yes.
your, so you know that the machine is not good, is going to give you a good something, but you will still have to do your
Yes, yes,
post
yes. Yeah,
editing
yeah. Yeah, man. No, no, no. That is
because
it.
it's not going to be
That's it.
perfect.
It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. But of course, it gives you, and even if it's a terrible first draft, the amount of work you would have had to do to produce your own terrible first draft
Mm.
is, is significant. And so it has cut back on a lot of that time and effort. And then the human can go in and make the
Right.
necessary
Yes.
adjustments
Hmm.
for cultural context and all of that.
Right, right. Yes, yes. Right. So that's good. Yeah, so I know it's a lot of work that your unit is doing. One last question I'd like to ask you is what do you see as the role Jamaican has played? We kind of touched on it a little, but just to wrap up, it has played and it continues to play or will and will continue to play in the promotion and the preservation of Jamaican culture.
Okay, so first allow me to say that the Jamaican language has really been egg on the faces of all of those people who said, oh, sure, this is a dirty language. It can't take us anywhere. English, we have to do English. And if we're going to communicate with the rest of the world, we have to do English. No,
Mhm.
the story about English is true. But what the speakers of the language have demonstrated is that we can communicate with the rest of the world in Jamaica. So much so that there are people in other countries who actively learn and use the Jamaican language. So you have Chinese and Japanese sound system operators who use the Jamaican language on stage. And sometimes they are using the Jamaican language to an audience full of Chinese people. Yeah? We have people in Amsterdam, people in Berlin, people in Latin America, in Uganda, in Ghana, in Nigeria, etc., using the language. And this tells us that we have something that is greater in value and potential than we realize. And some of the internationalization, the institutionalization is taking place despite what the naysayers have said over the years. But people say, oh, you can't earn through it. If you want to earn, of course, you have to. No, Jamaican musicians have been earning for decades singing songs in the Jamaican language.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. And, I have a strong feeling that it's not just, yeah, that the language is related to English is a part of its charm, I do believe. But I have a feeling that had the music been in English only, it would not have been as successful as it is now. Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
Because we would not have been offering something very different from what the UK is offering, from what the United States of America. So it is a part of the thing that makes us unique. So it's an extremely important part of Jamaican culture. And for all of the people who have wished death on the language, what they're doing, they're wishing death on the nation and the potential of the nation. The day we stop speaking the Jamaican language is the day that we become uninteresting to the rest of the world.
you lose a vital a vital aspect of who you are,
of who we are. Yes.
of who you are. Yes. So, Joseph, Dr. Farquharson, this has been an interesting discussion. It's been a learning experience for me, and I'm sure the viewers have learned a lot
It
from
has
our
been a learning
conversation.
experience for me too.
Yes. Yes. So thank you so much for being with me today on our Culture to the World. And I would like to wish the best to the Jamaican Language Unit at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. And, and viewers, thank you so much for watching. We're going to see you soon as we meet more people and learn from their experiences in our next episode of our Culture to the World. I know.
Thank you.
Okay.